Well, thanks for joining us. Welcome, welcome. Happy Thursday. So happy to be here with you and Karen. Hi, Karen.
Hello, hello, hello.
Karen, who
Yeah.
is our education and children expert and panelist today. And we're going to be talking about lots of great things. So, one of the themes this week is self awareness, self mastery. Um, and maybe mindset with all around that area. And then this today we were talking about with Peter, and I know something that Karen will touch on too, about positive and negative traits and how we can handle those or focus on those with our children, and then also the ways we can connect better with our children. You were saying the 5 things to.
Yes. So five. I was inspired by many things this week since we've spoken in the last week. But one is sort of 5 things to focus on at this point with your children and how you are going to be with your children. And I was looking at a wonderful article by Laura Markham that was published in Psychology Today, and so talking about peaceful parents and happy kids. And so I hope to touch on some of those pieces as well. So, yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. So let's get started. Where should we start?
Well, so it's interesting to talk about sort of self-mastery and to ask sort of what have we been doing in terms of, growing our self-mastery and sense of self. And so my path over this period of time is that I have aligned myself with lots of thought leaders and practitioners, authors around these questions of, where are we today? And where are we going in terms of our forward motion for ourselves, but also for our children, because of course, much of what I talk about is around children and education and children and parenting. So my self-mastery has been around that. And I've been really fortunate to be in the company of some wonderful, wonderful people. So this morning I was on, I'm on a morning call every morning. I'm gonna give a little shout out to a couple of educators. So Doc Severns here in New Jersey has a site called Number 4 Learning, and she's been sponsoring these sessions called Wins and Wonders. And she's been bringing on these terrific people, thought leaders and such, around questions of parenting and education. And we've had dynamic conversations. And today I had the pleasure of listening to and speaking to Ira Sokol, who is driven to put learning spaces and technology and strategies together for children so that every child can access sort of an equal playing field around these things, but also talking about letting children be leaders. And he's the author of a couple of books, Timeless Learning and The Drool School. And so this morning, Ira was speaking about giving children, seeing children and all possibilities. And I think that swings back to the conversation of positives and negatives. And it takes me back to Psychology Today in the article. So I just kind of put a bow around that for everyone so it doesn't seem like I'm swimming all over the pool. And my thought is that if we see children as all possibilities instead of positives and negatives, if we look at the traits of children, if you want to call that the traits, the characteristics of children, or even of ourselves as positives and negatives, then there's a tremendous short-sightedness in that. And so the conversation this morning and hopefully the conversation we'll have today is around how can we see more broadly? How can we, in a sense, put on more of a, if I were going to do an analogy, more of a wide angle lens and see the whole picture instead of zeroing in on, what is the problem? What is the trait? What is the thing I have to fix? What is the thing I wish my child wouldn't do? What is the thing I wish I wouldn't do? Instead of the why and the how and the and the, you know, the tight, the broader focus on who am I, who is this child in front of me, rather than not positives and negatives. How do I just embrace the person? It's not to say there aren't things that maybe, you know, you want to change about yourself, or you'd like to help your children see in themselves. Notice I didn't say change, the see in themselves. That's certainly an important factor. But can we embrace the moment, like in the person and who we are?
Yes, and that totally relates to this morning's hack. We were talking with Peter about it, where he did a really good exercise. So yesterday, Peter said, you know, there are not such things as weaknesses, and you know, in people. And I was like, I'm ready to argue that, but I know it's tomorrow's subject. And then he started, and he divided the page in three areas. And then on the left side, he said strengths. Then on the opposite side, all the way to the right, he said weaknesses. And then there's a middle column, which is traits.
Hmm.
And then he's asked me, what are my strengths? So he gave me 3 strengths. And then he said, you know, that could also mean, and gave me the opposite of what that could also show as. So for example, I'm very solution oriented, also means I may be a little perfectionist at times.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
therefore the trait is I have attention to detail, and I look 5 steps ahead, right? So
Right.
it's very interesting to then, and then he said, there's no such things as weaknesses. We're just focusing on them and trying to change them. And really, we're going to be, why not just focus on the positive aspect of that? And he said, like, even with children, if there's a child that, you know, is very creative, but is very creative with art, and he's tried sciences, but it's not really it's the child's thing, then a parent is not going to say, oh no, you got to do the arts. Well, most of the time, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my childhood, it's like, if you don't like piano, then don't do. I still had to do piano. But it was, I want to, but if I did piano, I was allowed to do drums, which I really wanted
uh,
to do drums.
there was a bribe involved.
Yeah. And so it's very interesting. It's like, you know, you're going to look at the strengths and go there, because in a trait, there's also both sides. So is that what you're also saying?
Say that again. Say that one part again.
In a
If I'm looking
trait,
at, yeah,
you can have both sides. It can manifest in a so quote unquote weakness or
yeah.
quote unquote strength. And the importance is just focusing on that strength.
So if we look at a child and take that example, right? So you're a perfectionist, and we see that we put that in the negative column, right? If we were to focus on that with our child as a negative, then that will be the thing that will grow in that child. If we can focus on the child's strengths, uh, if we can focus on the child's strengths, we can grow those strengths. So what gets the most attention is the thing that grows.
That's
So
so powerful.
yeah, what
I
gets the most
really hope people are
attention
like
grows.
listening. Whatever you put your intention in is what's going to grow. So if you're doing that on a 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old, that's what's going to manifest more strongly when they're 40. Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so what I like to do is to say, define for me, give me the top 10 characteristics of your child, the child you see at age 20. What's the most important things that you think your child needs at age 20 or at age 30? Parents will never, in my experience, parents don't say, well, I need them to, you know, get 100 on every test, and I need them to, you know, be the top ranking student in their class and be the valedictorian, and I need them to this and I need them to that. No, it becomes it becomes a description of characteristics and traits. You know, I would like my child to be happy. I would like my child to be able to support themselves in a fruitful life. And I'd like my child to, you know, be a wonderful parent. And I'd like my child to, you know what I mean? They start talking about these broader descriptions. And yet in our everyday life, what we're focusing on with children are are pieces of minutia. So I'm asking that we focus on the whole child and the positive, and be the reflection of positivity rather than negativity.
And can you give us that's so brilliant, and I think it's so true, and it's sometimes hard. So having that perspective is super helpful. Thank you so much, Karen. What would you say are some examples that you can give us so that it makes it more concrete?
So a child is struggling, and let's say your child is tearful. You have a child who is regularly tearful, and you can say, you know, you're too sensitive, you're always crying, you know, you've got to stop that, you got to toughen up, you got to, you know, you got to fix that. Or you can say, you know, I see that you're struggling with this, and just be in the moment with the child. Or it might be, it looks to me like you need some hugs, and guess what I have hugs to give you. And so I love, like, it could be something like, I love how much you care. I love how much you care. What can we do with that caring? Would be another wonderful perspective. So instead of, you know, you're always sensitive, you're always, you know, you're too soft, you're hurt too easily. It's, I love the fact that you care. You care so much. How can I help you to express that care in a way that feels good for you? And it might be, you know, we're going to help a person, or we're going to write a story, or we're going to do some art, or we're going to, you know, I don't know what, it depends on the child, but I feel like there are other instances where, you know, the child comes home and is not getting along, and we start giving solutions to the problem, which sort of revolve around how that child can fix it, instead of, you know, I hear you, I empathize with you, I've had experiences like that in my life. What can we, you know, what can we do? How can you, you know, move in the relationships that are happening at school, or at the playground, or with a sibling? I just feel these are important moments to give kids perspectives, and not to try and fix or try to shine a negative light on these instances.
Yeah, it's so powerful. I think you, like the fact that I love the fact that you care. You know, how can we direct that? Like, how can we direct that in a way that makes you feel good? It's not like making the child or person. I think this is applicable to adults
Yes.
too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
Right. But what it's saying is that there are possibilities. There's many ways to look at it. And I want to have a conversation with you that involves your voice, that gives the child agency. Sorry. That gives a child some agency in finding solutions. Um, and what it is, it's handing over some of the power that I think, you know, kids don't have often.
Yes, and that helps connect. So talking about connection, I know that you have that article that you were going to you're talking to us
Yeah,
about the
yeah,
5 ways that we can connect more.
yeah. That's sort of peaceful parent, happy kid. You know, we're talking
I
about,
like that. Peaceful, happy parent, happy kid.
yes, I'm borrowing that from Laura Markham, who's the author of this article. And she's talking about, first of all, kind of centering on yourself and sort of replenishing yourself, asking yourself, because in these trying times, we're all, you know, pretty challenged. And I think sometimes we don't even realize it. So it comes out in different ways. I've noticed that lately, I feel like people are quicker and more emotional. And I have found myself to be such as well. So it's something to kind of keep in mind. So it's sort of, how do I center and replenish myself? And then once I identify that, what of these ways can I do with my children, and what are the things I must do by myself? So, it's trying to start from the perspective of, I need to be centered. I need to feel okay. But I don't necessarily have the pleasure or the luxury of all that time that I might do something on my own. I have children now who are home all the time. What can I do for myself when I need to say, this is mommy time, daddy time, this is parent time, and this is our time, and join me in finding my center. And for everyone, that's going to be different. It could be a walk in the park, it could be meditation, it could be yoga, it could be cooking a great meal, it could be doing a jigsaw puzzle and just chatting, it could be playing a game. I mean, it's a lot of different things. So then it's a matter of, which of these things will make me feel centered, and of these things, what can I do with my children? What could include my children? When can I include my children?
And you
So
gave some good examples of the jigsaw puzzle. I was even thinking coloring
yeah,
together. Coloring
yeah,
is sort of a meditation, or
yeah,
yes, even meditation, going for a walk, playing with the dogs outside. And it's allowing ourselves to take that time and understanding that that is nurturing. And it's also a great way to connect, because it's teaching, I think personally, if, being a child, seeing my parents do that, it's a great example. That's what I'm going to be modeling. A lot of times we do what they do, not what they say.
right, right. Very well said. What's pointed out is that one of the most important things that parents are doing today is allaying fear. So there's so much to be fearful of. If the media is in your home and conversations are happening around children about the circumstances we find ourselves in, frankly, if they're seeing the death toll and the images of people in hospitals and so on and so forth, there's so even fearful of what's coming next, because what they've known is now been pulled out from under them. So what's coming next, or even the anticipation of what's next, can create a great bit of fear. And so I think that for us as parents and as educators, one of our major jobs is sort of allay this fear. So how do we allay this fear? And one of the ways is to just be really connected, to get back to being sure we have connections with our children, meaningful connections. And so I caution what is a quality connection, right? What is a quality connection? So sometimes we'll take quiet times and we'll use them to kind of deliver a lesson, deliver a message, address a behavior we didn't like, or deliver a solution to a problem. And I would like to see parents rather just be with their child, so that they feel a sense of trust. They understand this is not judgment, this is moments that we have together. And so suggesting, instead of taking the moment to say, well, yesterday when you had that problem with your brother, and this would be a great time to talk about it, would better be, let's really just sit and let this child feel this love I feel for him or her, them. Let me just be in the moment with love, and with, in a sense, even admiration. Because children are accomplishing a great deal in their everyday lives right now, in terms of just, walking through this ambiguity, walking through this uncertainty. And so what they need to be certain of is that you love them, you're there for them, you're present in the moment, and you've got ears to listen, arms to give a hug, lips to give a kiss. I mean, like, you're really there. And actually even to receive those things. You know, sometimes parents are in a hurry and a child will go to give them a hug or something like that, and it's kind of brush off, and we don't mean to do that, right? We just, but just stop and be in the present moment with positive thoughts and love and care, and leave the things that, you know, might reflect disappointment or disagreement or, you know, correction. Leave them aside. Leave them aside. Use this to assure them that you are there. You're there. They don't have to be fearful in your presence.
That's so powerful. I think that, yeah, it's like when it's quiet time, it's a good time to talk. But then we're reinforcing the message that when it's quiet time, oh, this is the time that actually brings anxiety, because this is when mommy or daddy want to talk about the stuff that I did wrong,
Right.
or
Right.
about the problems discussion. And therefore quiet time is perceived as something not so nice.
Yeah. 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 And then, you know, parents will say, well, my kid doesn't want to sit with me. My kid doesn't want to play with me. My kid doesn't want to do the jigsaw puzzle or the game or the so on and so forth. And you have to ask yourself why. You know, why? I mean, oftentimes it's because those are the times that we take to deliver our lessons. You know, instead
So
of,
when we don't, so if we're not delivering the lessons, then when do we deliver the lessons?
but maybe the lessons are delivered in our actions. Maybe it doesn't always require the sit down, draw it out. You know, maybe the lessons are delivered in the everyday, the way we behave, um, the way we converse. So you can still take, for instance, the squabble between siblings, right? So this is driving parents crazy. They're home all day and their kids are just fighting all day and squabbling over the littlest of things. And so we want to try and fix that, of course. You know, and we want our children to be, you know, friends and care for each other throughout a lifetime. And we have all these kinds of images of our kids and their relationships with their siblings, and yet they're brawling, you know, in the next room over, I don't know, the red crayon. And, you know, yes, we're going to redirect them, absolutely. But rather than to go on about it, maybe it's to let them go on about it. So sometimes we're trying to fix things that we don't need to fix. And in fact, if we fix them, we have not actually fixed them. So sometimes it's looking at a situation and saying, well, rather than deliver the lesson or the message, can I put, in this case, the two people together and say, you know, I know that you have the power to find a solution to this problem. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to do that. Listen to each other. I think some weeks ago we talked about a peace table, or a way in which that one person can be heard, the other person can absorb it and then reply. And if you can sort of facilitate that without you delivering the message at any point in time, even in the end, it is not your job to say, you see what you learned. You know, it's more to say, how'd that go? What did you learn? You know, what could be different next time? What could you agree to? So that you're not delivering the lesson is being found, in a sense. The solutions are being found.
And that's always so much more powerful than being told.
Yeah.
100%. So we
Yeah.
have a couple questions. Thank you for posting those. One of our first question has been on for a while, and so Karen, just I'm gonna frame this question a little bit, because you're a teacher and you
Mm-hmm.
own a school, and you in your school you have ages from very small children to pre-college students, in
Yep,
my understanding.
that's
And
correct.
so, the question says, Karen, you prefer the term child over student. Why do you see the distinction as being so important to teaching and learning?
Mm. So first of all, the word student has a meaning to all of us. And it's somewhat universal. And for most people, the perspective is, there's a student, therefore there's a teacher, and the teacher has the in the chain of command, in the hierarchy, the teacher is at the top, and the students therefore fall below. This hierarchy is problematic. And the idea that there's a teacher and a student is problematic because really there are two people who can play the role of, and even sometimes at the same time, a learner and a student. So the teacher can be the student and the child can be the learner, or vice versa. So I like to use the term children when I'm referring to the young people in my class. And I like to use the word learner because we're all learning together. Mostly I'm doing it because I want to break down this hierarchy. You know, that I have read a lot of work from Riane Eisler, and Riane Eisler talks about the hierarchy of actualization. Yes, we are adults. Yes, they are children. That you can't get beyond that. And yes, we probably have some wisdoms that children don't have, although sometimes children surprise the heck out of me, as do adults, about what they have and what they don't have. So there is an actual hierarchy, but how can we kind of, in a sense, level the playing field so that we have the most vibrant community of learners that we can have? So I take away the word student and I use children, or I use learners to try and get to that place where things are more level, and it's a give and take instead of, you know, the teacher gives and the child maybe takes or maybe says, forget it, I'm not listening. And then therefore there's a more vibrant community. There's a broader and deeper exchange of ideas. And I think that increases possibilities. So prefer children or learners.
Thanks for sharing that, and thank you for that question. And Richard asks us also, we sometimes forget the courage part of the word encourage. How can we develop courage in a child and be the encourager without doing the work for them?
That's a great question. And don't, I mean, I don't know, Jessica. I think that I'd love to hear your thought on this. I think that we have been called to be courageous in these last 10 weeks or so, 12 weeks. We've really been called to find the courage within ourselves, to live in this ambiguity, and to continue to look and to grow in so many ways. And it has taken courage. And you know, for me in the world of education, I think there's tremendous courage required for a teacher to truly provide a meaningful education for children. Because to provide a meaningful education is to be very much outside of the system of education that's been created, and that everybody is expected to lockstep join in. So there's a tremendous amount of courage needed there. And I know that we must give our children the tools and the permission to be courageous. Because to be courageous is to be true to you, and to move about the world in the ways that you feel are most productive, important, essential, meaningful. I could go on and on and on. So yes, I do think it's very important to encourage children to find that courage within themselves. And it is to do it without doing the work for them. So it is, in a sense, a modeling. So some of it is modeling, and some of it is certainly the interchange of ideas, collaboration. But ultimately, we can't do everything for our children. Because if we do, then we haven't had them consider the idea, pursue the idea, succeed or fail, if you want to call it failure, get back up and try again. If we do it all for them, they will not have the tools and skills that they need to be courageous when the time comes. Also to be resilient. They won't have those pieces if we do everything for them. And I think it's easier as a parent. There are times when it's just so much easier to do it yourself, right? I had a parent on a call last week and she said, you know, before we had this really crazy busy schedule, and I just did everything. I ran around the house, I made the beds, I picked up their clothes, I laid out their clothes, I laid out breakfast, I put the dishes in the dishwasher because it was so much easier. I just did it all. And I didn't think they could do it. And what I've learned in this period of time is that my children can do all those things. Yes, the bed sheets might not be as tight as I want them to be, and the clothes may not be folded in the way I would do it, and the breakfast dishes, maybe, one of them got left in the sink, or maybe they didn't wipe the table quite the way I would wipe the table. But my goodness, there's so much they can do, and I had no idea they could do it. And I said to her, "That's great. So what's the outcome? Aside from the fact that you're not doing it, what's the outcome?" And she said, "The outcome is my kids are proud of themselves. My kids feel successful. My kids are talking about the things that they can do and actually asking for more things that they can try." It's incredible.
That's a great motivator there. And
Yeah,
it's so
yeah,
true that sometimes we get caught up on the details. I'm like, that's not how you load the dishwasher. Here, I'll do it.
yeah,
That's not how you do the bed. Here, I'll do it.
right.
And you see that in relationships too, by the way.
Uh-huh.
In
Yeah,
couples where women, like the men, well, this is one example, it could be the other way around too, but a lot of times women like to be controlling, and that is not a feminine kind of energy if you want that polarity, right?
mm,
And it's like, that's not how you load the dishwasher, you're doing it wrong, let me do it. So they don't even want to do it anymore. Like,
right.
they were gladly taking out the trash, loading the dishwasher and cleaning this. I remember my mom saying, he likes to wash it with hot water. He doesn't use soap. And she goes, I let him do it because it makes him feel good. He likes doing it. And I
Yeah,
didn't realize that and then she goes, and if it's not washed properly, I'll just wash behind it. He won't know. I'll just go and
yeah.
wash afterwards.
It's true. And we are very controlling of our children. And we also want to create nice and clean and lovely spaces for them. And we want to create these really nice lives for them. But ultimately, if you go back to my first question, which is how would you describe your child at 20 or at 30? It wouldn't be somebody doing everything for them. It wouldn't be. They would be resourceful, they would be resilient, they would be responsible, they would, there's all these things they would be. But if you see that for your child, then you have to perpetuate that now in how you build a relationship with that child and how that child builds a relationship with the world around them.
Amen. So we were talking about I think there's like 4 or 5 different things from that article you're talking about. So
Yep.
one that you mentioned was, replenish ourselves. And then we talked about how, the moments where we have the downtime together, where it's not really ideally the time to teach the lessons, at least not every single time, because
Right.
then it just it just defeats the the replenishing part.
Yeah. Yeah. And also in hand with that is that you can help children with fear if you're building a relationship with them that goes beyond right and wrong in lessons. And I think
Yeah.
that take that time to do that. The other piece is, we have to, we're together as a family, most of us, and whether that family is, what we think of as the traditional family, or it's, friends living together. Technically, we're kind of all family right now in these spaces we're living in. And how do we take care of our bodies? How do we connect in nature? How do we keep our energy levels a little bit more even? Um, how do we expand on our ability to focus on something for lengths of time? It's kind of a bunch of things all in one, but it's kind of, it harks back to sort of the happier, healthier person. And so how do we do that as a family? I think the parents have to initiate that and figure that out. Uh, and and also, I think we're at a point where we need to um, help children to get outside. So I saw a post by a friend of mine, I believe it was earlier today, and his son went outside for the first time since March 16th. Think about that. What have we said to, and I'm not judging the fact that the child was in since March 16th. I understand that. But we have a lot of undoing here because we've said that outside isn't safe. We've said that people aren't safe. And we've lived it. We haven't just said it, we've lived it. So now how do we sort of undo it with the knowledge that we have? So can we get our kids outside? You know, can we get our kids on the back patio? Can we get our kids on the sidewalk? Can we get our kids, you know, even potentially to a grocery store? Like, I know everybody has limits as to what they want to do right now, but how can we start to sort of dip a toe outside and start getting kids outside?
Why is that crucial? Remind us, like, why is that absolutely crucial?
We have to, if we perpetuate this, we perpetuate fear, we perpetuate anxiety, we perpetuate problems in mental health. So we've got to figure this out. We've got to figure out how to get our kids back into society, even how to get ourselves back into society. And it may start with yourself. You know, you may still be nervous about going outside, but if you can go outside and you can, you know, maybe you could ride a bike. Maybe you could take a walk around the block. Maybe you could just sit on your front patio and you know, blow bubbles, or maybe you can draw chalk messages in on your walkway. Like, but can you get outside and can you figure out what your limitations are and how you move about safely in the world? The longer we stay in, the harder this problem is, the harder this is going to be to sort of reacclimate to a broader world than that which exists in the four walls of your home.
Yes, because we are not made for that.
No, we're really not. We're really not. So, and then the other piece is laughter, like laughter, right? I keep saying, bring humor, bring humor, bring humor. But really, we need to be laughing more. That really deep belly laugh that feels so good, you know. And actually, it's interesting because, you know, that laughter may bring tears because, right? Sometimes it just releases whatever we're holding within, and that's okay. That's good. So think about what your children may find funny, what brings humor to the situation. You know, in this case, the author says, oh, have a pillow fight or have a family dance party. Those are great ideas. You know, telling jokes or watching a really funny movie, or you know, just whatever strikes as silly in your home. We used to we had this tradition in our home of making pizzas. So we'd like to get dough, and each person would make their own pizza. And somewhere along the line, we started throwing flour at each other. And, you know, it was messy and it was silly. And people were like, oh, you do that? And I'm like, yeah, I do that because we laugh. We enjoy it. Like my children will probably do it with their children. You know, I used to blow bubbles in the house. People are like, oh, you blow bubbles in the house? That's an outside activity. No, like we found it fun. We thought it was funny. We had a good time. You know, we just were silly. And so sometimes it's just being silly. Do the silly things, you know, come downstairs with a mustache drawn on your face, or, you know, I don't know, like there's so many ways to sort of bring a smile about, bring silliness about, bring laughter about. And we really need to do that now more than ever. And if you think about the chemistry behind it, you know, the releasing of particular hormones and so on and so forth, laughter's good. Laughter's really good. It's a very healthy medicine.
Very healthy. And I found that having a puppy makes it very easy to have laughs. That's very easy. I just crack up on my own at home. I'm just like, oh my God. Yeah. And I really crack up like heavy, like belly laughter alone with him because it's just so funny. So yes, finding ways to have laughter is so important, so crucial. And and sometimes, you know, one of the things I can think of is like, oh, the flour, the bubbles, you have to tidy, you have to clean up. What do you say to that?
So what? It doesn't take long. It's not it's not costly when you think of what you got. So if you just thought about it in terms of what you gained and what you have to do, the gain is so far better than the loss. Because alternatively, you could be arguing with your children, you could be in separate corners, you could be isolated, you could be, you could be in tears, you could be, I mean, there's, if you
In a
just thought
very
about,
clean house.
yes, yeah, it'd be a really clean house, and everybody would be, disconnected from themselves and from each other and from all of these wonderful emotions that we have as human beings. I mean, we have these incredible emotions. So let's celebrate them and let's bring them forth. Yeah. So I don't care about the mess. The mess gets cleaned up. I am very much, I'm actually very much a perfectionist, and I really like a clean house. But if I can throw flour or blow bubbles, I know anybody can, because I would want to be cleaning that up. But the laughter is worth every moment that I spend cleaning it up. Who cares? And soap is soap, whether it's a bubble or not. So if you blow bubbles, then you can mop your floors.
Perfect. I think we should all blow bubbles before we mop our floors. It's like a weekly activity.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. And Diana on the back end says, being silly, I love that. With kids, it's the best excuse for adults to be kids
Yes,
again.
exactly. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. I think the last piece is in the use of the word grace. So that word has, for me, has a lot of meaning. My grandmother's name was Grace, and she was the most important person in my life. And as I think back on it, she lived that word, to live with grace, to be, particularly now, when, again, in this ambiguity and under the kinds of pressures that parents are under and that educators are under, is to be with grace, to let go of what we were talking about, let go of perfection, let go of this intense and great sense of responsibility, let go of the feelings of being overwhelmed, and just to kind of remind ourselves to just to live in, maybe in the moment, take in the day, not build these big pictures of all of these things that we have to accomplish, or who we have to be, and then live with guilt, right? So to live with grace is to let go of some things, to find peacefulness, uh, to apologize at times, to be forgiving, and to just kind of see the moment, in a graceful way. Maybe move a little slower. If you think about a dancer or somebody who moves gracefully, right? There's a whole posture, there's a whole way in which they flow. And maybe if we could find that flow in our lives, we would be better off, and children would be better off.
Yes, and make it fun. It doesn't need to be a big, hard effort. And that's one of the things reoccurring themes at Hack Mankind that we've been sharing, whether it's for fitness, for business. It's really just look at what it is that you can add an element of fun and make it easy. It does not have to be hard. It does not.
Yeah,
Oh
there's
my
no
goodness.
perfect in parenting. There's no perfect in parenting. And so there's no reason to feel guilty. And there's no reason to come to the end of the day and feel I failed. I learned, right? I tried. Um, it wasn't a moment of brilliance or a day of brilliance, but we got through it. And tomorrow is going to be a whole new day. And I'm going to be the best parent I can be. And in the end, when it's all said and done, if you can say you were the best parent you could be with all the information and tools that you had, that's pretty darn good.
Pretty good indeed.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you all for tuning in. I am conscious of the time. We'll quickly end with the last question, but I want to say thank you to a few names that I could see here. Diana, Richard. I also have Joya, Halad, Ria, Dameen. Thank you so much for Noor. Thank you for joining us and for tuning in. And there's a few more names, but I really appreciate you being here on with us live. And if you're listening to this recording, thank you so much for tuning in. And also make sure to submit your questions, whether it is on the comments below or if you are somewhere else, there is an area for sure you can send us your questions so that we can answer them on our next call with Karen and make sure that we can cover any concerns, questions, thoughts, or comments. So let's end on this, Karen, because I think it's an excellent question and I'm also very intrigued by it. It's so Richard asks, your students are known to graduate with most of them, if not all of them, 100% of them receiving college acceptance. What is it about your students that makes them so attractive to colleges and universities?
Ah, great question. Yes, we have 100% acceptance at four-year colleges, all types of four-year colleges. And we're very, very proud of that. When I'm working with my children and I provide college counseling and career counseling to my students, I start with the questions of why and what. Why are you moving on? What is it that you're moving on to? What are your visions and dreams? And what does that look like? Does that look like college? Does it look like, the career training? Does it look like a gap year? What does it look like? We do have a standard in our school. We require our students to apply to colleges, four-year colleges, a minimum of 3. And the reason we do that is because we want them to know that they are worthy and that they can get in and that they do have choices. And then we say, okay, now you can make choices. So we don't push necessarily for our students to go to college, although the majority of them do. But what makes my students different is that they already have a sense of themselves, who they are, what they're about. They have, throughout their education at the school, have made so many choices and have taken so much responsibility for their education. They're quite mature in how they see the world and how they see themselves. And they're able to articulate that in very meaningful ways. And so oftentimes, and this will be interesting to a lot of people, my students don't take standardized tests. They don't take ACTs, they don't take SATs. They don't take SAT subject tests. What they do is they book tours and they book interviews with college admissions staff because they can articulate quite well what they're looking for. They ask the most poignant questions. They can discern whether a college is appropriate for them or not. So there's an interesting perspective, right? We all think that colleges are accepting children, but my children are accepting colleges. So they're looking for what is going to work for them with this sense of self-awareness and purpose. And so our students are, going off to college with everything they need in their tool belt, in a sense.
Wow. So I have a question in that. So so maybe it's changed since I graduated, which has been a little bit. I went to an international school in Switzerland when it was time to apply for colleges. And to apply for colleges in the United States, they told me I had to have SATs because no colleges would accept without SATs, even though it's an international school and we did a lot of other things. So I didn't even apply to colleges in the US because I was not doing math SATs and I was not doing, I think it was sciences or I don't know what other SATs. Not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
So now has it changed, or to
Absolutely,
just it hasn't changed, and you and your children just find a way to work around it?
There's at least 2,000 colleges in the states that no longer require SATs, and it's growing. And in part, it's growing because of what's just happened with the pandemic. So kids weren't able to take their SATs, and schools weren't able or will not be able to fairly judge them in a sense. Going forward. And what colleges have found is there is no correlation between success in SATs and success in college. There is no correlation. You will not be able to say the kids who got the highest scores are going to do the best in college. And in fact, some statistics would tell you that they are the ones who struggle the greatest because what they've become is book smart, but not worldly or people smart. And so they get to college and they can't manage themselves. They can't manage the day-to-day challenges. So the other thing is that SATs and ACTs are all about inequity. It's an inequity. The kids who do well are kids who come from families who can afford to pay for the test preparations, the education, all of the things you know, that divide us in a sense. So the kids who do well on the test are often the kids who have been, their parents have spent thousands, tens of thousands of dollars preparing them for this test, because it really is just a science. Taking the test is just a science. So if your family doesn't have those means, you're not going to do well on tests, and you're likely not going to get into those colleges, right? What we're seeing in education right now is glaring inequities, and SATs, ACTs, you know, the way in which colleges were accepting students is atrocious. We could also talk about the scandal and the parents who had other people take their kids' tests and write the essays, and we could get into all of that. I think that also has contributed to a movement, a greater movement away from SATs. But even before that, there were about 1,800 schools that didn't require a standardized test. And so
Awesome. Glad to
I
hear
say,
it.
yeah, I say to my students, find your colleges first, and then if they require an SAT, get to studying. But if they don't, why bother? You can do so many better things with your time. So much can be done with that time you get back. And the lack of stress and anxiety that's connected to taking the test.
Yeah, I went to a college that is a world-renowned college internationally, one of the best in its field in Europe, and I did really well. I graduated as an honor student with all the bells and
Right?
whistles on my
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
on
yeah.
my whatever you call it. But and I wouldn't have gotten into any colleges in the US because SATs were just, I knew for a fact, and I was lucky to grow up with my parents and my dad who's very similar line of thought, and so it was, I was very lucky in that aspect.
I think colleges got to understand that they were missing a whole group of people who would be an asset to their institutions, like yourself, you know, just lost because they wouldn't open the door for them. Crazy.
Alrighty, well, amazing content today. I so valuable, so valuable. Thank you so much, and it's super valuable for me. And I don't even have children yet. Not anymore yet. I don't even have children, so it's incredible the amount of value that you bring, Karen, to these calls. I so appreciate you and
Thank you.
the help and the lives that you're touching. Thank you, thank you. And so just to recap a little bit, one of the main things that I've taken away is replenish yourself. You don't need to do it just on your own. You can do it with your children. Make sure that the moments that you're using to of replenishing of downtime are actually moments of downtime and not time to teach alone. And so be in the moment, be with love. And we talked a little bit about courage, and you asked me what I thought about courage. And I thought the definition of courage came from heart, the French word cœur. And so I Googled it while we were on the call, and it's actually true. So I was like, okay, I can say it now. And it's true, like the origin. And for me, courage is meeting every moment with heart and
Nice.
with love. And
Nice.
so really that's kind of a message I also want to leave people with is and then I love when you said admiration. Be with your children in admiration, because I could totally see it. I see it in my cousin. She's, oh my goodness, how old is she now? 13, 14? Ooh, time flies. And she's always be my baby cousin. And I am in total admiration of her, total admiration. And I also love the exercise, and I think people, you really should take a piece of paper out or a notebook and start writing down, what would you like your 20-year-old child to have as qualities? Is it to be doing the tests and getting A's at 20 years old, or is it having compassion, having courage, right? So what
Right.
are those qualities that you want to be reinforcing? I thought that was super powerful. And then bringing, I always, the fun element, we'll have the image of you throwing flour in your kitchen forever imprinted in my mind, because
Yeah.
and you say, like, even yourself, you like everything tidy, and you can see in the on your background, it's so beautiful, elegant, really nice in your home, and you can have that and be throwing around flour in the kitchen. So I think that's a beautiful reminder, and having fun, bringing that energy, that belly laughter to the home, and just being happy and healthy. So looking at what we're eating, going outdoors, and also the importance of really reacclimating to being social and to being outdoors is incredibly important. And it will not only affect us but our children in a psychological level, and the long term. So we really need to make an effort of being outdoors, and baby steps. It could just be on the patio, it could be there, and just see how far you're comfortable in taking it. But it is important and crucial. Anything I missed that you want to just wrap
No,
up,
you did a great
Karen?
job. Well done. Well said. Well said. I think that I just want to say that, you know, I have admiration for every teacher, for every parent who is on the front lines and doing it with care and thought and intention and purpose, with great respect for young people. That's for me. Those are the frontline people right now. Those are frontline. And I don't mean to take anything away from doctors and nurses and all the people who are risking their lives, but I think it's important, and it's not said enough, that the parents and the educators who are right there mindfully loving and guiding these children and being present for them are very much on the front lines. And I admire them for that.
Yes, thank you. That just gave me goosebumps. I totally agree,
Yeah,
because it's the next generation. It's
that's
our
right.
future,
Yep.
and I appreciate that. Love that. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Karen.
you. Thanks. Have a great week.
Take care, everybody.
You
Have a great week. We'll see you
too.
next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.